We had our first Open of the year at Bough Beech this previous weekend. Very exciting as we had our first sort of glimpse of summer. Good 15 degrees, even pulled out the summer wetsuit for the first time this year. And we had some beautiful sunshine to go with it. But not only was it warm and sunny, but we also had a decent 8 to 15 knots. So at points it was a little light, but overall it was pretty good racing. Now the thing about Bough Beech is the direction was coming from the southeast/the east between the 2 days, which I've heard is known for being very shifty. And while it was somewhat shifty, the shifts weren't aggressive. You could see them coming, and so it was definitely a case of keeping your head out of the boat and looking ahead, understanding, is that gust going to be a shift or is that going to be a lift? So definitely an interesting one. Now this is race number 1, still getting tuned in. I'd been out on the water for about half an hour just trying to get myself sorted, get my strops the right sort of length as they were a bit too tight, and get my rudder down properly, so I still haven't sorted that. And yeah, I still didn't really know what to expect. Obviously, we had a bunch of local boys who know what they're doing. There was a few visitors, so really all to go for. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a bunch of boats getting close to the pin end. And we're probably, I don't know, less than a minute into sequence now. We're probably about a minute into sequence, maybe just 1 minute 30. A bunch of us determined that a bunch of these boats were going to do a port flyer. So there's definitely a bit of bias. It definitely paid to be on the port end of the start line, but a load of these boats had clearly sold themselves on port flyer, way to go, let's do it. Apart from, I think 3 or 4 of our starboard boats, that'll be the 1 minute, 3 or 4 of our starboard boats were like, you know what, we also want to start on port, but we're on starboard, so deal with that. So yeah, here's 4 of us all getting queued up near the committee boat, ready to now sail down the line. Now, yeah, I'll let the video do the talking, but this port flyer did not go to plan for the people who wanted to start on port, but it did go somewhat well for the boats that did start on starboard. Yeah, there was lots of shouting. So yeah, we're getting ourselves ready now. We've got a minute to go. Sailing down the line, ready to power up. Probably could have turned around a little bit sooner. As you can see, there's quite a gap between me and Jamie, the boat ahead, which is what causes all the problems, because there's a little bit of faith for the port flyer boats because of this gap. As you can see, they're all queuing up, realising there's not a single gap, apart from there kind of is between me and Jamie. Rich Smith decides nah. George, on the other hand, thinks, yeah, I can make that. I have to avoid him. And then he has to tack off because of Andy Peake here, as does Jamie. So there's a lot of shouting here and a lot of confusion because George had got himself so set on the idea that the port flyer was going to work that he thought, yeah, I can make that, realising halfway through, I can't make that. Luckily everyone did their turns. And then I don't know why Jamie tacked off so soon, considering that there was other boats coming across. So he just caused everything to get a little bit more complicated than it needed to be. Eventually we all get onto port like we want to be, because the course is pretty biased at this point because the wind keeps oscillating backwards and forwards. But yeah, pretty funny way to start a regatta. We're going along quite nicely upwind. I think we're all pretty much, maybe not quite on the ley line, but we're going quite nicely. But I wasn't quite keeping my head out of the boat, and you'll see in a minute what I mean by that. I'm thinking I'm going pretty well here. Jamie's just rocketing off into the distance, but I'm feeling pretty happy with how the boat's feeling. However, I do run into a slight issue with the shifts, and I definitely learnt my lesson in race number 1 about the shifts. Yeah, here's the shift. Ooh, not quite. You need to bear away harder for them at Bough Beech than Grapham. Grapham you need to bear away, but Bough Beech even harder. Yeah, there's a few times I stepped in and the boat was still coming on top of me to windward, so it's like, okay, bear away. Yeah, not looking out the boats, I'm still just getting myself familiar with, still getting myself familiar with, there we go, need to bear away harder. Andy Peake does a much better job of it. Meanwhile, I nearly capsized to windward, but I don't. I managed to save it. I managed to get myself back in the boat and get myself hooked on and ready to go. So, not too much of a loss, but still not ideal. Again, I went into this event with the sort of mindset of, this is just to get some boat-on-boat racing. I don't care about the result. A good result would be nice, but I'm just here to try things, take some risks, and see if I can make some gains so that when we get to the Nationals at Mounts Bay in September, I'm feeling nice and ready, nice and practiced, especially because they had 8 boats. One of them didn't turn up in the end, but 6 of them were the top 6 of the Nationals, so the racing was going to be tight. The racing was going to be close, and one of them was someone who's raced 600s 15 years ago and just got another boat after seeing what we've all been up to. So it took a little bit of time getting the rust off for them, but on the other hand, it was alright. Okay, so it looks like we're going. I've actually made up a bit of ground here, potentially. Jamie, who looked like he was miles ahead, I've just sort of lost height on him, but I've caught up to Andy as well, so my capsize to windward maybe not too bad after all. Now, we're on the ley line, maybe? It's hard to tell, because what I didn't know as a non-local, was that as you get closer to the windward mark, sometimes it shifts in your favour, so you kind of don't need to So I did overstand a fair bit on the Saturday, thinking that I was going to have to do a double tack, which is not particularly quick, and we'll actually talk about double tacks just tacking and distance lost in a future video, because I want to see if I can do something this coming weekend about that. So we're going along on the ley line. You can just sort of see the mark there under my boom, and all the boats are still pretty close together. The boats that have done turns have caught up, but as you can see, there was so many gains out there. If you followed the gusts, it didn't really matter. There's Rich, who decided to duck all of the starboard boats and go away on port, and George, who's already done his turns, managed to make up for it. Now, this is the first time I'm using my new kicker that I spliced on. You probably saw that on my shorts feed. It's working really well. You can get a good amount of range. Runs really smoothly, so I'm really happy with that. It's always a bit of a risk changing things in your boat just before an event, just to waste your time at the event, so not something you want. I've got a couple boats behind me, so I'm just trying to maybe keep... Again, this is something I need to work on, is my reaching technique. I'm trying to determine, do I want to head up? Do I want to sort of protect my air? Do I want to go super low? It's not quite, as you can see, I'm just about getting the boat planing a little bit on a reach there, but this particular lap is quite light, so you don't want to overdo it and go for loads of height and then need to bear away tons to go around the next mark. Now, this run was really cool. Well, I thought it was cool. If you kept looking behind you, basically the wind had a pattern all day on Saturday that it would either have huge pressure down the left side, directly in front of the clubhouse, or on the right-hand side on a big bit of grass next to the clubhouse. So you could easily work out, and the run wasn't very long because of the shape of the lake, so you could very easily work out, should I jibe off, should I not? Now, I think at this point, head's not out the boat yet. We're only on lap 1. But I was able to make some really good gains later in the event by looking behind me, seeing huge amounts of pressure either coming down on the reach or coming down to on the right-hand side of the run, looking down the run. And I was able to go round boats just purely because I could see the pressure. And so it just emphasises the importance of looking behind you and looking for that pressure. George actually does a really good job of this, because you'll see in a minute on the right-hand side that he's gone down the right, and he's got a nice channel of pressure that's able to help him catch up after that poor start that he had. Well, good start if you didn't have to, tack again and do turns. It's worth clarifying, we only have to do one turn in the 600 because it's such a pain in the backside boat to do a full 360 in, so bear that in mind. But yeah, it's all getting still quite close in this race, and the racing definitely got closer as the weekend went on, especially going into Sunday. We're all on each other's toes, so I'll be releasing videos on those for each of the, race 1, 2, a little bit of 3, 5 and 6. I didn't get 4, I ran out of battery, but yeah, you can see George has got a nice bit of pressure channeling him down, and he's going super low too, which is helping. Okay, we're getting close now. So this jibe mark was quite close to the shore, so some people decided to keep going before they jibed and then go super low to the shore, as you can sort of get hooked into a nice bit of pressure. Yeah, so others, on the other hand, like I think myself, jibe off fairly early on to protect their clear air, whereas I think George follows suit. But yeah, it's still pretty low, this reach. It's still pretty deep. So yeah, it's worth not getting too carried away pulling controls on, jumping out on the trapeze, because actually it's still pretty low. Yeah, you can see I take the kicker off there thinking actually this is still pretty deep. And on some of the laps we actually did to do 2 jibes where sometimes it had shifted and we couldn't make it on 1 jibe, which I mean that's all part of the tactics of sailing, is keeping an eye out on what the wind is doing, because the wind can be more consistent in some places than others, but at the end of the day it is random. You can't assume what it's going to do, you have to look for it. So I've got a nice bit of pressure there, which is helping me catch up to the boats, but also helping George get past. I can't quite tell. I think that's Andy Peak ahead there. And we've got maybe Jamie coming along on the left. Still feeling a little bit tight. That's Jamie down there on the right. So we've got 4 boats here coming around the mark in one go. George needs to give me some room. There we go. That's Rich Smith coming in on the inside. Nice exit from me. Got a lot of speed. Got my own little lane there. But I've also got the boats below me trying to come in on the inside as well. So looks like I can go quite nicely. If I was looking out the boat, I could see it as a bit of a header hitting me now. And I decided to go for attack. Yeah, that was not great. If I had been looking out the boat, I could have seen there was pressure on the left and attacked a little bit sooner, especially once Richard got out of the way. Then it was just down to me to make a decision then. The wind definitely built as the event went on, so this first race was a little on the lighter side, but going into race 4 that day, we were all 1 exhausted, but 2, the conditions were good. Yeah, we have to go through the line each lap too, so you can see here I'm trying to go for height just so I don't have to pop another tack in. But actually, going to the right-hand side might have paid again, so it's sort of catch-22. It doesn't matter if I can't go through the line, because actually I want to attack anyway. Got a nice bit of a groove coming on here though. Catch up to Jamie, who tacked off quite early, so actually he made quite a good gain going around the marker on the 4 on the outside. But I have thought it's time to go for attack. Bit of a lift there I think I just tacked into though, so potentially should have gone a little bit further. Again, keeping your head out the boat is crucial for a little place. Well, probably just fairly sizable. Absolutely fine for 600 sailing, but shifty, and shifts can be annoying for the 600 when you're getting used to the boat. But it is can add a real tactical gain to the sailing part if you keep your head out the boat. Yeah, we're all heading back to the right-hand side after what happened in the last lap, but what we learnt very quickly was what happens each lap is completely independent and will not necessarily correlate to what will happen in the previous lap. So there was times where what going to the right towards the dam paid, but it didn't necessarily pay the next lap. And so it was important to keep your head out of the boat and keep aware of that. And we definitely saw that on Sunday where we had club racing joining us and they were having a start after us. And when we caught up to them, it definitely paid to go left with them, past them or overlay the ley line a little bit, overstand it, and then just channel through on clear breeze rather than going towards the dam to stay out of trouble where they weren't going. There was definitely a bit of a split in the fleet, and I made some good gains by staying on the left-hand side, but also keeping out of trouble. Right now I'm in the nice dirt of Rich Bone there, 980, so I really should think about maybe tacking off, yeah. Oh, maybe not. It's difficult because I don't really want to tack off because we're so biased this way, but I'm not going to really get going if I'm sat in the dirt. But I have got some speed, and I'm hoping that if I can get going quicker than him, so I'm sort of punching my way out of his dirt now, so it's kind of worked out. Nice bit of pressure. I'm actually glad I didn't tack off. You can't really tell from the camera how far ahead the pressure is. Sort of thing that if I'm training, having the stick a little bit higher up could be useful. Sunshine doesn't help either. Yeah, you can just see the mark which just went past Rich Bone's mast, so a little bit further. Now I'm sort of relying on Rich here to sort of help me understand where the ley line is. He knows what it's like here. He knows whether, if he's going to attack, then I probably feel fairly confident attacking too. But if he's still going, then I'm thinking, oh, well, if he thinks that it's probably a little further and it's going to be bad, then I should probably go a little further too. I think here we made some big losses because we massively overstood the ley line. People were able to tack on the inside of us and make it in one, and so we just sailed a load of expeditions for no particular reason, really. It's interesting though, because you can see there's loads of boats here coming in on the left-hand side. They've gone far left, whereas we've gone far right. But as you can see, I'm reaching down to the finish, to the mark now. I am catching up to Rich though, which is always good. But yeah, we have the issue we found with the right-hand side, especially the ley line, was that you definitely had a lot more holes. So it definitely paid to come in on the port lane line most of the time. Even if the right paid, you wanted to sort of not get too far over towards the trees because it definitely shut down on that right-hand side, but not too badly on the left. Okay, we've got Jamie crossing ahead here, so we've caught up to him a little bit, and that's Rich Smith. So we all rounded the mark together, and we're all rounding the next mark together, but we all did wildly different things, so all still to play for. And it's now looking like maybe me and Richbone were actually, well, now there's a bit of a lift there, we're looking okay, but it was looking a little bit tight, and Andy Peake's probably going to miss the mark there by attacking there, especially where his patterns haven't popped. Yeah, it's all looking very snug. I'm just trying to get ahead of Rich Smith so I don't have to give him mark room. I can sort of just cut him off. I would say confidently that I am not over that with him. Now this is the bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. On these top reaches, would you go high, protect your clear air? A lot of people made loads of gains by just going around the mark, going super low, staying out of trouble and just cruising along super low. And there's very little that the windward boat can do other than try and sail lower, but because they're already going so high, they will go slower to get to them, and as a result they won't catch them. So it kind of works out quite nicely, but at the same time you run the risk of being the leeward boat of getting loads of dirt, and club racing, that definitely was something to factor in. Well, the club racing didn't really get in our way. There was definitely a few times where it's like, okay, I do not want to sit underneath National 18 because they've got a huge amount of dirt coming off their sails, and it definitely noticed it on the bottom reach, even going super low. It's really hard to get past them, whereas the lasers and stuff, less of a problem really. See, Jamie's gone really high there and it's paid off for him, so maybe I should have gone higher and protected my air. It's kind of challenging to know what's best. So we're onto the run now. I'm hoping I'm keeping my head out the boat now. Am I going to look behind to see if there's pressure coming down the other side? Because at the same time, it's important to split off at these opportunities to make gains. You're not going to win a race by staying on the same tack. But at the same time, it's important to...
There's still a few more laps, Rich.
It's important to look for those tactical gains you can make. So actually, I'm going quite nicely here next to Jamie, despite the fact that he was ahead. Some boats went really far right. I think that might be Rich Bone there, who's gone really far right. Now Jamie's got a nice puff there, so I should really head up a little bit to catch that puff. There we go. I think Rich Smith might have jived off with Andy, but the sort of disadvantage there is there was no pressure over there, so while it was a good idea to do something different, it just made it harder for them to catch up. So it's definitely important to not always split just because it's what you should do. If it's really clearly obviously not going to pay, then it's probably best to stick on the course and wait for the next opportunity to make a tactical decision. Because the run was quite short, you didn't really need to do too many jibes, and sometimes you could do it in one, but sometimes it definitely paid to sail the extra distance, popping a couple jibes, especially because jibing a 600 is fairly straightforward, and I actually think it's really nice. So here, Jamie's jibe, but I'm on starboard, and he has to give me mark room once we get to that 3 boat length side. Yeah, here we go. Nice little shift there that's going to help us get around the mark. And I've managed to get past Jamie again, which is always good. Now, Jamie did come second in all the races but one. And so it's definitely worth analysing what Jamie does in some of these races to go from having not necessarily the best start in the world, but being able to make some humongous gains and get himself up the front, despite the fact that he had a poor first lap in quite a few of the races, actually. So it's definitely worth having a look at how he was able to do these incredible recoveries. Because starting is really important in racing, but if you are able to recover from it, it doesn't make it less relevant, but yeah, you know, if you have a bad start, it can be very difficult to do anything about it. But if you can have a good way of being able to get around the fleet and keep them behind, then it's a very, very powerful skill, because it doesn't always go your way. So we're going along here. I can see the mark is just a little bit below where I'm pointing, but I am trying to just keep clear air going. But at the same time, it's like I need to make sure I'm not going to sort of miss the mark and have to pop 2 jibes in, because it's not going to be very quick, and I'm sailing extra distance. So I think we've got, what, 2 boats in front of me? We've got George, who's got himself into the lead now, despite a dodgy start, and Rich Bone, who's just ahead of me. So I'm in 3rd. We've got Jamie just behind me on my tail, or going past me now. And we had Andy and Rich Smith behind me. But as you can see, still all up for grabs. Really struggling to get around this mark here. Jamie does have to give me mark room. But I closed the door on him. I knew he was going to go around, so I had a bad rounding just so that I could stop him going on the inside. But now I can't nudge off. But he has just accelerated off because I had a really poor rounding where I was going super low to get around the mark at no speed at all. And then just slammed the door on him, so I just had no exit speed. So was it worth it? Let me know what you think. What I have done though is keep a bit of a margin between me and the boats behind, so which is good. Now we were doing about 4 laps a day, so these are quite short courses, about 10-minute laps, but 4 laps was definitely feeling a little bit on the long side of how, because they're short courses, I say shortish, because they're not the biggest courses in the world, there's a lot of moving around, so even though you're racing only for half an hour, it feels like you're racing for 45 minutes doing a bigger championship size course. Just trying really hard here not to accidentally sail into the committee boat. That anchor was concerning me. I do just miss it. Now I can foot off a little bit and go for speed, even though it looks like I just got into a nice little lift there, which is nice. Jamie's gone for a tack. George or Rich Smith or Rich Bone, someone's gone straight ahead, and I think there might be someone who's done a quick double tack as well just next to my head. So I think I decided to keep going towards the dam after what we've seen. Also, we were sharing the event with Wayfarers. While we didn't really interfere with the Wayfarers, it's still worth noting that on that top reach right now, there's a lot of dirt, so going to the left-hand side might not be the move, especially in later laps as we start to catch them. We never really caught them, I don't think, but yeah, you're definitely going to be going up the beat on port and catching a little bit of that dirt as they're going along the top reach, or down the run for that. So it's, again, just another thing to think about on maximising your speed. You've got these challenges to deal with. How are you best going to deal with them? Now the nice thing was they weren't like actually getting in the way of the racing. It's not like you want to attack but there's a blimmin' Wayfarer in the way or whatever. That was not the problem, so that was nice. So I've tacked off. Not really sure why. Because I think the issue is, until I started looking at the boat, in my head it's like, well, I don't want to go too far to one side and get stuck. I mean, there's a bit of pressure, but I think this is where I lose the place and get one of the boats past me. Maybe 2 of them. I mean, you can see already that, like, anything can happen. What happened one lap doesn't necessarily mean it will happen for the next. Now, if I had a compass on the boat, which I have got, but I haven't got it on the boat yet, I'm just constantly being headed. I'm just losing height and height and height. And every time the boat kind of comes over to windward a little bit, I'm just drifting sideways too, which is obviously not helping the situation. Now I'm chasing over to the other boats so I'm tacking back, okay. But why? Unless I'm on the ley line? I mean, the fleet, as you can see, is split all over the place. Most boats have gone over to port, but there is someone who's gone, I think that might be Rich Bone, who's gone hard towards the dam. Will it pay? I don't know. Probably a little bit, but not too much. There's definitely a lot of pressure coming down that middle side of the course, and I think this is where you can start seeing those gains downwind. Yeah, tricky conditions for this first race. Constantly on your toes, just trying to keep the boat nice and flat. There, I've taken a bit of kicker off just to help let the sail breathe. I definitely was struggling with the kicker a little bit all weekend, of trying to make sure I had enough on that when it got breezy into the 15 knots to give me the power and the drive that I needed, but at the same time making sure that as soon as we hit one of those lulls, I had it off so that the sail could breathe and start to power up again. It's definitely sort of a balancing act, and I think on the whole I probably didn't pull enough on all weekend. If I look back, definitely felt like I was putting too much of the main sheet, the sort of leech tension through the main sheet, whereas I probably would have found it a little bit easier to have a little bit more kicker on, especially because my strops were a little bit looser, so without the kicker there is only so much leech tension I could get on, and as soon as I come off block to block just a little bit, I lose that tension, so the kicker is definitely very useful. So here I think I've got myself into 6th. I managed to have a terrible beat by just making it up as I went up the beat. Again, it emphasises the importance of keeping your head out of the boat, even if it is difficult to do so. So all the boats that went left got gains, boats that went right. And again, we're going to do a video on distance lost during attack. This happens in race 5, which we'll show you in another video, where I'm going along and I'm able to get past Rich Bone and finish just ahead of him. But the interesting thing is, I cross just ahead of him, but when I tack, I'm probably a boat length, maybe even 2 boat lengths behind where I was after I complete the tack. So it puts it into perspective of every time I do a tack in a 600, am I losing 2 boat lengths? So for me, they're going up the beat, especially slowly, and I'm not able to get my sort of a good pump out of the outside of the tack as I hook back on. Every time I tack, I'm losing a boat length or 2. Let's say 2 boat lengths for the sake of this. So if I do 4 tacks up the beat, I've lost 8 boat lengths, which is quite a lot of distance, to be honest, versus someone who's just banged a corner, who's only done maybe even 1 tack. So when you factor in like that, you go, actually, it's got to be really worth it to put that tack in. And it makes sort of the opportunity cost is very different to something like a laser, where you can just pop them in, you weren't really going that quickly in the first place. So I'm going to do some sort of looking at the GPS data to see if I can figure out if I can improve my tags by trying to get my weight out further, so that when I'm still hooking on, the boat can at least start accelerating. So by the time I've hooked on and I'm actually sailing, the distance lost is much less. Because the issue I had with the video with Race 5, which you can find on Instagram, and on the YouTube Shorts actually I think, was that I just didn't hook on quick enough, and as a result it just didn't really accelerate as quickly as it could have. It was still a good tack, don't get me wrong, and it was still good enough to allow me to get past him and get 3rd in that race, or 4th in that race. No, it must have been 4th in that race instead of 5th, but it's just a thing to put in perspective of tacking like that is so important to get right, and you want to be able to do it consistently in those sort of high heat moments. So I've jibed off fairly early because I've seen pressure here on the left, and maybe I'm jibing back already. I've seen pressure coming down the right hand side. Yeah, here we go. I've seen the pressure down the right. I'm taking it and I've caught right up to Andy Peak now, thanks to the fact that I've seen the pressure down the right. Keeping my head out the boat is so important. I can't emphasize it enough. So even though it looked like I was going to be quite behind when we went on the windward mark, I was able to actually sort of catch back up. Well, I've kind of got into a bit of a low. It wants to jibe. I should let it jibe. Or not. Oh yeah, I need to sort out my trapeze lines. The adjusters are far too long. I need to try something. Okay, so we've jibed back. On the bottom reach now. This is the 3rd lap of 4, I think. Yeah. So now I can do whatever I like.
I've got it. It spits me out again.
That's me complaining that I can't get it right. But again, comes with a bit of practice and emphasises the importance of getting out on the race course early, doing a few test beats, a few test runs, seeing what side feels good. So definitely something I'm going to be doing at the Nationals is getting out on that water, you know, as early as I can so that I can just get myself familiar. So I'm not using that first race to figure it out. I can be good in that first race, because in this example, my first race was my worst result and I discarded it in the end. But it's because I used it as a learning opportunity to understand what works. Definitely harder to do on your own. A lot easier to do when you're sailing with other boats and you can see what they're doing and understand how you're performing in comparison to them. So if you've got a sort of training partner who's willing to come and help you, then that. But that's the thing. Other people will also be going onto the race course early, so I can go out with them. They won't necessarily want to cooperate with me because they're trying to do something for their own gains, but I can see if they're going quicker on the opposite tack to me. So this is useful to help you understand, like, there's big gains on one tack or the other. Yeah, here I had to jibe off to actually be able to get to the mark. Everyone else is going to have to jibe off too. But it's really shutting down on this lap, so it's difficult. You've got to keep on your toes. Yeah, got to jibe back for being on support. Waiting for him to jibe back. Trying to keep those racks out of the water. Right, so can I make a gain here? That's the question. Andy Peake's having to jibe off again, so that's allowed me to sneak past and actually get myself up a position. Now I've just got one more position I could potentially gain on here. Now it's shifty now. It's getting quite shifty. I make a few mistakes. Shocker. Go. I know, who would have thought it? So going quite nicely along here. Go for my tack. So does Rich Smith. Andy's gone for attack too. But I still have a bit of a lane here, so it's not too bad. But I do end up capsizing to windward in a second because I get hit by a massive lull by not looking ahead. And I don't react to it very well. Here we go. Trying to react to it, trying to react to it, trying to react to it. It's all good. Okay. I then try and sheet on again. Rich Smith's got a good lift. I'm on the other end of the gust, so I've had the shift. There you go, capsized to windward. But the ironic thing is, Andy Peake, I think, tacked off. I managed to get back on the... I mean, I've never done a capsize this quickly from swimming in the water. But you'll see, I am absolutely determined to get back in the boat and get going. Immediately sheeting myself back on and going, and I think I managed to keep Andy behind me because he got stuck in a hole. So yeah, not an ideal situation to be in for sure, but definitely was a wake-up call to me of keep your head out the boat and bear away harder for those jibes. I haven't noticed my main sheet's got caught from the jibe, from the capsize on the rack. Yeah, see, Andy's tacked off, but I'm going to get through the line first. Yeah, it's all getting a little bit light here, but can I keep ahead of Andy? It's going to be tight because he can get through the line here on port 2. Looks like some boats have gone off to the port side again. It looks like I'm going to go off to the right-hand side here. Again, try something different. My concern here is at this point, Andy's really the only person I can keep up with. So I want to sort of make sure I don't separate myself too far away, especially considering what happened in the last lap. Getting a little bit of speed on here, looking quite nice. Hopefully, big shift. It's really difficult. I find it really difficult when you get so much sort of coming over to windward and you're standing in the middle of the boat. I find it really hard to not just fall over. Okay, I've got a little bit of a lift here. We can see there's some boats that have gone far to the left-hand side again. And maybe I should take a ticket out of their book. It looks like, I think that's Andy on the far right there. He's lost a lot of, well, I've got a lot more height on him, but we're fairly lined up with each other, so I might have a slight advantage here when it comes to hitting the ley line, but again, it's hard to tell. It's very, very up and down. Again, another big shift. Something I was finding was working quite well was as I came in, I could sort of brace against the shroud so that I didn't accidentally sort of swing too much forwards. Okay, is going left gonna really work out for me? I did get headed, but like, I don't think doing all these tacks is really working. I mean, there's some good pressure. Pretty good pressure coming down. Much quicker than I was going on the other tack. Starting to look at that luff. I think maybe do a little bit more downhill just to stop the... You can see a little bit, it starts to invert a little bit. I mean, the creases are fine, but it's just making sure that it's not too baggy that it will invert on itself. Definitely could do with putting a little bit of kicker on now, just helping the boat drive. Put in another quick tack. I'm curious to see how Andy did. Okay, Andy tacked back too, but it looks like I'm crossing him. But he has caught up because he tacked back too, so maybe lost a little bit of height he did, or maybe I gained some height. Now, this is the final lap, so my main goal here is learnings, but also just keeping him behind. The boats ahead are probably too far ahead at this point now, so it's just about taking the pressure where I can and just cruising myself around the mark. Yeah, nicely done. I think Andy went a bit further to the ley line, so it potentially could work in his favour, but going quite nicely here. It's going to be hard to judge that ley line. Really need to try and keep some more sheet tension on so I can come out of those tacks with more power. There's Andy coming along, but yeah, I've definitely got him there. Now we're getting onto my weakness, the reaches. So I've got a nice bit of pressure there. Overlaid the ley line there quite a bit actually, so that might hurt me a little bit, but I've got a nice bit of pressure. Okay. Could definitely do with taking a bit of kicker off. I need to accept that this is not going to be quick and time to start powering off. Maybe it will be a little bit, but I need to not lose the height or lose the depth I was having here. I need to bear away. Yeah, let's start getting ourselves powered up for downwind to get that kicker off. Right, let's have a look for some pressure, see if there's any pressure coming down the left or the right. Before I head down to the right, it looks like I'm being hit by the pressure as we speak. Getting the weight far forwards. It's looking quite nice. Pop in a quick jibe. I think I saw Andy's got some nice pressure down the side. Well, I've just been hit by a gust, so I must have looked behind, seen some pressure, jived into it, taken it. Because Andy, while he is in line with me, he's still quite far out to the left. He's still got more distance to cover. Whereas I'm sort of down the middle of the course. He's popped his jibe in between those wayfarers. Pop my jibe in too. Bit of a shift there too, so I've taken that nicely. Okay, that's the first 600 rounding the next mark. Good speed around that jibe there. Put a little bit of controls on just to get the sail a little bit nicer. Take a bit of that pressure, but don't get too greedy, because if I take the height, I probably won't make the lowered mark, as we've learned. I'd have to jibe off. Just can't quite decide. Is it worth being hooked on and potentially a bit unstable, or getting the weight far forwards and soaking low? I'd probably, if I was to look back at this, focus on soaking low and then harden up hard for the mark. But I'm also conscious of Andy, who's right behind me. There's the first few boats finishing there. Two of them finishing pretty close together. Okay, I think Andy's right on my tail here. Okay, loads of speed. Nice. Ooh, better wait for those shifts. Do not get dunked into windward if I'm not careful. Okay, it's looking nice. Couldn't quite make it through the line in one go, but I can pop a quick tack in and just make sure I can keep myself between Andy and myself. Here we go. Pop my quick tack in now. I think Andy had tacked. Oh, there we go. There's Andy. Just want to make sure that I can tack on top of him, stop him from crossing. Knowing that now I've probably got it because he's got to do a tack and that will lose him some boat lengths. Beautiful. Just like that. So, in summary, race number 1, difficult. Difficult. Definitely, I guess my summary is keep your head out the boat, look ahead, see what's going on. I got a good feel for the course, got a good feel for the conditions. My results improved from this point onwards, so do stay tuned for some of the later videos where I've got my head out of the boat a lot more. The racing's a lot tighter, and I think I have 3 photo finishes, so where I'm able to come out ahead. So all really good learning, and yeah, do subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it, because it really helps the channel. So yeah, if you enjoyed it, then yeah, stay tuned for the next part of the Bough Beech Open with the 600s.